It's the experiences of my own family which make me such a strong supporter for the campaign to end indefinite detention and detention in this country. My grandfather, Rabbi Dr. George Salzberger, whom I love very much, was interned. He was a rabbi in Frankfurt. Here's a picture of him, and I remember just that smiling and warm face. He was a rabbi in Frankfurt for 30 years before he was interned by the Nazis in Dachau concentration camp. When I knew him, of course, he'd managed to flee to England. And as I was growing up, I asked him about his experiences, and he said, "I'll talk about anything except those 2 weeks he spent there, detained and brutalized by the Nazis. And when he left, he said they made him tell all kinds of lies, and he was glad to be able to escape with his family to the safety of Britain just before the war." So I grew up with his and my grandmother's story, and I knew that we were only alive because he had managed to escape. I didn't know my father's side of the family so well. Those who survived, lived in America or Israel, and not round the corner like my grandfather. But here's a picture of some of them. You can see right in the corner, the second from the side, that's Ernst. Ernst became a doctor and also lived in Frankfurt. His experience as a doctor there was to be interned in Buchenwald, and when he was freed with help of the British consul, he came with his wife to Britain, and they were eventually joined by their young children. Here he volunteered as a doctor to support the war effort. But in May 1940, with the Blitzkrieg in France, Belgium and Holland and the fall of those countries, there was a terrific fear of a fifth column, and overnight he became an enemy alien. From an unwanted Jew in Germany, he became an unwanted German in Britain. He was interned on the Isle of Man. Now, it wasn't, of course, the same in any way as Buchenwald or Dachau, but nevertheless he was separated from his family at a critical and dangerous time. He wrote daily. Let me read. "My letters are a silent conversation with you, and although only seldom I find an hour to be together with you in my thought, I always enjoy this. Don't be worried about me, and do your work and the education of our children in the same way as before, in calmness, as if I were with you. Whatever happens to us, we will not be separated. Also, if much land and sea is between us." That almost didn't happen, because they were trying to get permission with temporary visas here only to go on to America, and it came for his wife and children at a time when he thought he would not be released from the Isle of Man. In the event, he was marched under guard with other Jews who wanted nothing more than to support the war effort to the dockyards in Glasgow, where his family watched him board the ship. Now, when I met Jean-Paul, and I heard his story here, we talked in the British Library, of all of a sudden being detained when he was doing so much for this country, teaching, helping in his church. And he told me some of the background to what he'd been through, and how, when he was detained, he said, it was detention, but it was like prison. He told me about the person he met who twice in the 2 weeks Jean-Paul was there tried to commit suicide and take his own life. And the person who wept and said, "While I've been here 6 months, my girlfriend has had a baby and I haven't even seen our very own child." When I heard that, it reminded me of my own family and our past. And what Ernst, my grandfather, and Jean-Paul all have in common is a deep desire to get on with life, to create a future, to support and commit themselves in working for the country in which they have now found and hope to establish a new life. And that is overwhelmingly what refugees and asylum seekers seek to do. And I've been very moved by newsletters from refugees at home, of those who during COVID-19 now have worked in the front line of the National Health Service for the country which they seek to support. So to detain them, what sense can that possibly make?